I think data gets a bad rap. There needs to be like an understanding that your data is out there and it's being moved around every day. I would really like to kind of get ahead of that and control how it's used.
Welcome back, everyone, to Hidden in Plain Sight. Whew. It's been a wild few months. I've been doing my best to read and study historical trends, and I found something interesting. After almost every pandemic in history, there was disruption. However, there was also an eventual renaissance that followed the plague or the pandemic. In order to get to that renaissance, though, we need to expand our perspectives. To do that today, we're talking with the Renaissance man, Mick Baccio, a security advisor at Splunk. Mick's career spans the globe. He got his start as an information war specialist for the Navy. After that, he worked in InfoSec at many private companies, including places like Lockheed Martin. Next, Mick went back to the public sector and helped protect information and data at places like the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the FDA, and at the Executive Office of the President. From there, Mick became the first CISO on a presidential campaign for Pete Buttigieg. In today's episode, we talk about what Mick learned from his global experiences in the public and private sectors. We also discuss how he navigated through those to find his new role as a security advisor at Splunk. Enjoy.
This season of Hidden in Plain Sight is brought to you exclusively by our friends at Splunk, the Data to Everything platform. Splunk helps organizations worldwide turn data into doing. It's time for data to be more than a record of what happened. It's time to make things happen. Learn more at Splunk.com or by clicking the link in our show notes.
Mick, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. When an introduction comes through via email that has as many keywords like yours, I tend to perk right up. And when we got on the phone call to discuss, it was fascinating to learn about you and your background. I'm not going to go too much into it right now because I want you to share your story with us. This is a show called Hidden in Plain Sight. And I think with a man who has as varied a background and career as yours, you've discovered quite a bit of things that are hidden in plain sight. So welcome to the show and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me here and I'm looking forward to it.
So Mick, you have a background in cybersecurity as a veteran, among many things. How did you get your start as, a warfare information specialist in the Navy? If you could take us back to, I don't want to date you here, but when you got your start, take us back to those early days and what was going on.
I started in the Navy in 1994, and I was actually going to be a nuclear engineer. And the day I joined the Navy is the day I found out that I'm colorblind. And the Navy has this big thing about nuclear engineers need to see colors. And I was like, it makes sense. So I got into computers then in the Navy and kind of didn't look back. Real thankful for my time there on the USS Saipan, decommissioned ship now, and the uniforms changed. So it's weird. But I started off in the Navy, then kind of bounced around a bit, did some work at Iridium, satellite cell phones, ended up in the government when Health and Human Services was building a team out for their CSIRC, the Computer Security Incident Response Center. It was based down in Atlanta. And that was the department-wide computer incident response for Health and Human Services. So it was really, really unique. And I learned a lot from some great people there. Moved from there to CDC in Atlanta at the Centers for Disease Control on their incident response team. Then spent some time at Food and Drug running security operations there, and some time at the Pentagon incident response and Health and Human Services, again, to build out a threat intelligence program with some friends there. And then that was during the rollout of healthcare.gov, the Affordable Care Act. And then from there, I spent 40 days at the Library of Congress before going to the White House. It was great. It was a great opportunity, jumped at it. And it was just a weird conversation. It was just talking to the CISO at Library of Congress a week in. Hey, look, thank you for the job. This is great, but I'm going to have to go now.
That's a quick 40 days, but you only get a call from the White House every so often, right?
Exactly. And the call was a weekend, but government being government, and sometimes paperwork just gets slowed. It took a little bit longer for me to actually transfer between the agencies. So that was just awkward hallway moments. Hey, I thought you were leaving. I'm working on it. But it was a great time, and the folks there are super, super sharp. And White House spent some time there. Last year or so of the Obama administration, and first year and a half or so of the current administration. So over the 2016 election, the transition, everything after the inauguration, and that was definitely a unique experience. After that, I actually ended up at an instant response for a while, then spent some time at Verizon and got a call in June, I guess around June of last year, from the Buttigieg campaign to come run security for them, information security program, be the first CISO in the history of presidential campaigns, which is just bonkers to think about still.
Bonkers in a sense of we haven't had CISOs before this, or that it was just, an incredible time to be kind of pioneering there?
All of the above and then some. First, it was, wow, like, really? Like, no one's ever done this? I feel like someone should have done this before, right. Or there should be more than one of, me on a campaign. And that just wasn't the case, or at least in-house. So the Buttigieg campaign did that. And one, it was, wow, no one else is doing this. Two, I feel horribly underqualified for this. It's a pretty big thing. And to have that, on your shoulders, it was just a lot of pressure. I think mostly put it on myself, but that's kind of what you do, get in your head about it. And man, I'm not qualified for this. I'm not good enough for this. But, talked to a lot of friends, and they were like, look, you got called for a reason. And that was just a really, really unique opportunity. And I think taking what I learned in the federal space over a career and kind of transitioning that to the campaign, it was a really, really great experience. And I learned a lot about people and a lot about security and just overall implementing a cybersecurity posture and program, what people do and won't do. You can look in the paper, Google it, and Google me and hit news. And my departure wasn't as quiet as I would have liked it to been, but things happen the way they happen. And I'm over at Splunk now, and I'm really, really thankful to be over here. My first introduction to Splunk as a company was when I was down at the CDC in Atlanta. And I had a really good friend come over to Splunk about 5 years ago and watch the company grow and all the really cool things they're doing. I was like, yeah, man, I'll come work over here. I'll do that. It's awesome. So here I am. So it's a really, really great opportunity being a security advisor here, just kind of helping folks out, solve their security problems. And age of data. I can't think of anything around me that doesn't emit some kind of data, whether it's my phone, computer number 2, computer number 3, tablet, just all the nerd stuff around me that just generates some kind of data. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. So being able to figure out how to use that, it's one of the things I'm really, really looking forward to doing here.
It's a massive problem, to say the least, or opportunity, however you choose to look at it. Mick, I'd really be curious to take us back to, the campaign you were working on. And you mentioned that you learned a lot about people, as well as just, the security world in general, or maybe everything that you had learned before kind of coalesced into the security work you were doing for the campaign. But let's start with people. So, what did you learn about people as you stepped onto that stage in a more, public facing role?
I think one of the things I learned most on the Buttigieg campaign, when I say people, I mean internally, running a program and just how that bounces on people and how that lands and working with others in a way that I just generally hadn't been used to because of my government role. The Buttigieg campaign, full of fantastic staffers, and it was a pretty progressive campaign. And my idea behind, I don't do politics. I've been really, really clear about that, mostly because I think I'm just too ignorant to understand political views and debate them. So I just generally don't. I have mine and I care about them, but whatever you believe, whatever gets you through the day, that's awesome. But one of the big things was that I learned, and it's really, really weird because I grew up, military brat, joined the military. So very traditional, roles of masculine and what those mean. And the big thing for me on the Buttigieg campaign was pronouns. Like that was a completely new thing to be in an environment where it was just, hey, look at the end of your Slack profile, it's an option, put your preferred pronoun behind it. And that was just a weird thing for me because I didn't have any experience or understanding of it. And the folks I talked to, I was, I felt a bit Archie Bunkerish. I was a bit older than most folks on staff. So I was like, hey, look, my questions, I want to be real clear. They're coming from a place of ignorance, not anger or division or anything like that. I just don't get it. So someone explained it, what it means. And like, yeah, Mick, you got a he, him, and that's your jam. And you project that and there's no question, but you doing it, putting it in your profile might make someone who's not as comfortable, to put it in theirs. And I never looked at it from that perspective before. And just, it really resonated. And I was like, oh yeah, it does make sense. And just learning small things, just about how different people have lived. And, I've always valued those experiences over a lot of other things, just, interacting with people, learning new things, and just how to kind of be more effective in the workplace and how to communicate more effectively in the whys. The whys have always been a big thing. And I think that was really, really great there to learn.
I love that. When you were, at the campaign, you were there for about 7 months. That's a really dynamic environment where, every single day there are stories being published. There's a lot of real-time information. As CISO of something like that is, heavily focused on messaging, on PR, how do you go about, managing all of that that's, consistently coming out? And what was your philosophy as a CISO, on the first CISO in the history of presidential campaigns? How were you building that up as you went?
I kind of put everything into 3 big buckets, and like what I can worry about, what I can't worry about. When you look at the whole security spectrum when it comes to politics, you really have the discourse manipulation part, the IO campaigns. That is, I can't do anything about that at all. All right. That's more folks that are smarter than me are handling that problem as best they can. When you look at the hardware of the election systems themselves, what the EAC is responsible for, that's not my area. That's the EAC, and they're kind of hamstrung by not being a regulatory agency, but that's a whole other conversation. So me, it was just the internal cybersecurity of the campaign, are the emails we're sending out getting in secure? Are phishing emails getting stopped? Are we encouraging people to set up to multi-factor on all the things they have, and just kind of be more cognizant of not just cybersecurity, but operational security, communication security, just all those different things that kind of coalesce into keeping a presidential campaign as secure as it can be. Because part of the job is, you're a campaign. You want to reach as many people as you can and tell them about how great your candidate is. So that's kind of the hard part, is reaching as many people, but being secure about it.
Sure. And when you were at the White House, you were a branch chief for threat intelligence at the executive office of the president. What's that mean, if you could unpack that role for us? And could you just, I know some of the work is probably classified. Is there anything that's not classified that you can share with us that you were working on there?
We provided the technical reporting of items of interest from generally nation-state cyber threat actors. I know it's a lot. It's even more to unpack. So when you think nation-state, everybody knows what a nation-state is. Basically, it is authorized, offensive computer network exploitation activity at the direction of a government.
Okay.
So, hey, this is what Group X is doing. This is what we think they're targeting. This is how it affects us. This is why it is of concern to us. One of the other things that we were able to do a lot was when the principals, the president or the vice president, would travel overseas, we would the team would develop a threat briefing, a comprehensive threat briefing on where they were going, what they can do from a technical level. And I thought that was hugely successful. And a lot of other stuff that obviously, kind of falls in the realm of network defense and stuff I can't talk about.
Sure. When you are going about learning for a role like that, how is that even possible? Is there, are there a couple of resources you're going to? Are there any like trusted advisors, or are you just, surrounded by people who are all learning on the go? What's that process like?
I have a pretty non-traditional background as far as how I got into the role. I really don't know if I'd recommend threat intelligence as like the starting point for someone to get into for a career. It can be done, but I think, fundamental concept and principles of security, then moving into that, threat intelligence is pretty specific. And it depends on where you are too. And you're only as good as the visibility that you have. But as far as getting into security, I think there are just an infinite number of resources out there that will help you kind of figure out what you want to do. I think the biggest thing with security is figuring out what you want to do inside security, because it's so broad. So many different things you can pivot on, whether it's a blue team, your network defense folks, your red team, your offensive penetration testers, engineering folks that, development. There's so many different facets to get into. So I think kind of figuring out where you want to go and finding someone, hey, look, this is what I want to do. I think Twitter's a great resource out there, and just find that group that kind of meshes into what you want to do and get those resources. I think in information security, people do want to help. And I think there's a growing number of organizations and groups that kind of connect you to the things you want to do.
Right. So is your group now, there's a lot of folks at Splunk you're working with. How do you go about kind of like keeping that group fresh and maintaining your, your conversations with them and everything like that?
Now, mostly online, text, Slack, email, things like that. Before, it was just, it's really the social networking aspect. A friend of mine calls it the meat space. The conferences we go to, the conversations we have, the things we learn, the talks we attend, the webinars we watch, the chats inside there. I think just the soft skills, the meeting new people, that will take you as far, if not farther, than the technical skills in your career, is just the people that you meet along the way. Like, I've been in security for a long time, and the folks that I remember, coming up with are now the CISOs at, pretty large companies. And it's just amazing to watch the career growth and progression of your friends. It's really great to see. So I think your social network, your soft space, maintain that and keep growing that as much as you can.
When you are going through your career journey, and like when you're thinking about it now, from that 30,000 foot view, or however you want to think about that, you have a lot of experience in both the public and the private sector. Often we're like told to think that they're very different entities, or they're just, entirely different ways of thinking, of doing things. Did you encounter a lot of, major differences? How should we be thinking about like the difference between public and private work these days, when our lives are increasingly, relying on technology, on digital communication? Did you see a stark contrast between these two spaces, or are they slowly becoming more similar?
I think they're slowly becoming, I do think they're slowly becoming more similar. And the biggest thing that I've noticed, and I've kind of been on the soapbox for a while, is I think the ongoing failure of the public sector to address like a work from home environment throughout the course of my career really has hamstrung them. Where in the private sector, hey, look, you're going to be at home. And I think the federal government is catching up really quick, just by, virtue of they kind of have to. But I just don't think they were really ever going to adopt that. And I think that's the world where we're moving towards. So I think they have gotten better. I think it's also a maturity thing. I think in the public sector, it's definitely a more mature security stance in a lot of areas. Whether that's too rigid or not is another conversation, but I think that framework is there in the public sector at a more mature level. My experience in campaigns, I think political campaigns are the same, when they're definitely ready for cybersecurity. I think they want that need. I think all companies do. I think all people do in general. You want to be secure in what they're doing, but don't make it complicated and don't make it hard for me to do my job.
For sure.
And that's the balance of cybersecurity in general, is that operations to security, finding that middle ground.
For sure. And for everyone listening out there, are there any simple steps to becoming more secure that people can implement today? Like, what's the low-hanging fruit that you see as so obvious and most people aren't doing it? Or what is some simple ways to get started?
I think when you look at SANS, I think SANS is a really, really great, top 20 things you should be looking at. They're critical controls. And I had this conversation earlier today with some friends. Friend just wrote a blog about phishing and the effectiveness of a phishing program. And it goes back to, your security program overall. Being hard on people, traditionally you get a phishing simulation at work. All right, I will send out some phishing emails to people, a bunch, some will click on it, and the people that click on it, I'll make them attend more training, right? That's generally rinse and repeat. That's what we do. And I don't think that's effective. I think, shaming people and, hey, you clicked on that, you shouldn't have. I think it's figuring out the why in the program. And I think it's the bigger thing on security is just making it easier. We all know links are bad and we shouldn't click on them, but people are gonna. So how come security hasn't made the link safe yet?
That's a very interesting perspective and question. So you mentioned not shaming people. For many of us noobs out here that aren't as familiar with the security world, it can feel like, there are these obvious things that we have to know. What are some tips you have for other CISOs or people in the data space who want to teach their organizations and teach their culture without shaming folks that are noobs in the space?
I think there is a growing, growing vertical in the space. And a lot of companies I've seen popping up, they're kind of gamifying security. And one of the things I think we did a phishing exercise, and I had folks from Department A, hey, you think of some things that folks in Department B would fall for in a phishing email, and have that back and forth. People get more involved in the process. I think kind of making your security more accessible, finding that middle ground and explaining a lot of what you're doing, whether it's rolling out, hardware tokens or a new security policy, kind of explaining it as plainly as you can and as transparently as you can, the why and the how, and what they get out of it.
Sure. And when you're thinking about the why for the work you're doing at Splunk, can you take us through some of the things you're thinking about on a daily basis, or what's it like being a security advisor to a large publicly traded company that's focused on the data world?
So a lot of it is making the trains go, right? From an operations, whether it's using Splunk or Phantom, making the trains go and then making the trains go faster. We're constantly finding new and efficient ways to take the data that you have and either shape it the way that it helps you see it more effectively. One of the big things, since everyone is kind of working from home now, is RWI, the remote work insight. Basically, hey, look, here's all your stuff you're seeing at home, all the data that the network engineers are seeing, and I can kind of look at that at one centralized place, and this is what's good, this is what's bad. And it's a high-level overview, but I think it's really, really great the things that you're seeing we're able to do with data. So I think solving a lot of the problems that people are having from a security perspective, from, hey, look, we're collecting our DNS logs, our name resolution logs. What could we do with that? Or, okay, I keep hearing that I should be analyzing all my email that comes in and looking for those phishing emails and things like that. How do I do that using Splunk? Or once I do it using Splunk, can I make that faster? Can I save my analysts a little more time so they can work on the bigger problems that I have? I like it because it's a new problem set all the time.
Mm-hmm.
they're all security problems, but it's slightly different variations on, hey, I want to solve this. How do I do that? And having that knowledge and that background from years' experience has been super helpful. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that. I'm looking forward to doing more.
Very cool. And I think it's really interesting. You're a veteran. I have a soft spot. I am one myself. And for veterans in the technology world, what are some perspectives or advice you have for veterans who want to navigate into the tech world or maybe just become more successful? They're already in it and they want to take some of their knowledge that they've learned in the military, or maybe just like a capacity to embrace the suck and start employing that in the tech world. Any tips for them?
Yeah. If you find a company out there that you want to work for, odds are there's a veteran that works there too. Or reach out to that, or they might even have a program specific to veterans. I know there's tons of groups out there that aren't attached to any specific company or organization. They're just, I want to help veterans become cyber professionals. And those exist. And I know specific companies have those same programs. And if you can't find one, find me, hack me on Twitter and I will set you up. Any veterans that are out there that are looking to get in the cyberspace, there's definitely opportunities and programs out there. And if you can't find it on your own, find me and I'll help you out. I
love that. Mick, what are some of the big learning experiences you had in the military that you still take with you or you think about on a day-to-day basis, or maybe just, every so often in your current role? Anything that you're meditating on?
So I was in the Navy. I was on an amphib, LHA. It's an amphibious assault. It was me and around 2,000 Marines. And it takes around 2 weeks to cross the ocean because you do what's called gator squares. So in that 2 weeks, you're kind of staring at water. You learn a lot. You kind of reflect. I think the military is just a fantastic experience. I don't know 100% if I'd recommend it for everyone, just because I was in the Navy. The Navy's a lot of, you're at sea for a long time. If you got a family, it might not be for you. But I valued it more than any experience because at the time, I think it was what I needed in my life. And I still keep in touch with some of the guys I served with, and to watch their careers grow. I think that sense of camaraderie and teamwork, learning that at a young age in the military, I think has really, I hope, allowed me to instill that in others. And my role in the military, I was a computer nerd and in a relatively new computer nerd field. So I hope I was able to teach folks and be able to carry that forward. I think the experiences I had were super unique and super amazing. I got to see parts of the world that I ordinarily would never go to, mostly because they're port towns that the Navy can visit, and I wouldn't go there for vacation. That's a whole other thing. Now, I'm really, really thankful for the time there. I think the camaraderie and I think the discipline. The Navy is honor, courage, commitment. It kind of sticks with me. So I guess the core values really kind of instilled and carried through.
Definitely. Yeah. The Army, different place, but the acronym, leadership, the core values are always relevant. And I find myself thinking about them from time to time.
Right. That's going to stick with you forever and ever. Right.
You can't really escape it. And there's always these stories in your career that kind of map to each letter of the acronym that you think about from time to time. So Mick, when you think about building that camaraderie in the world of private companies and the security space, what things could the security or data industry, maybe just the tech industry as a whole, be doing to kind of foster a more, fun culture? How do we take some of that camaraderie and esprit de corps that you and I probably both felt from time to time in the military? How do we bring that to other people in the tech world?
I think data gets a bad rap in a lot of ways, just because there needs to be some kind of, I don't want to say reckoning, but there needs to be an understanding that your data is out there, whether it's your phone, whether it's your computer, whether it's your tablet, whether it's any social media or email account you have, your personal data is out there and it's being moved around every day. I would really like to kind of get ahead of that and control how it's used and put limitations on how it's used. You're going to have a Gmail account, right? You're going to use Google in some way. You're going to use Microsoft in some way, but that giving them carte blanche access to your data is kind of just, it's a little off-putting.
Sure. So maybe setting up some boundaries is like the first step to getting to a more like some type of esprit de corps for the industry?
I think so. I think like data collection is a thing that happens. Your data is going to get pushed around these companies. And I think establishing that sense of trust, like, hey, we're not going to screw you over. Like, we're going to make a couple bucks, but like, we're not going to, here's our line. Right. And as long as that's defined and accepted and understood, then we can all kind of move forward and have a better understanding of, hey, we're all in this together. I think there are bigger things when you look at data to worry about. When you look at like the arguments against encryption, or the CARES Act or things like that. I think everyone who's in the data space, as soon as they hear that, everyone's on the same page. And I think being able to keep that momentum would be super great. I'm open to ideas.
Sure. And when it comes to your thoughts about where the tech industry is headed, are there any bright spots you see on the future? I mean, so often we fall into this trap. It's easy in quarantine, right? Of doom and gloom or pessimism. What type of bright spots do you see on the future of the tech industry?
I think the research, like the doom and gloom part, I get it. It's a global pandemic. But when you look at the research that's being done towards the pandemic, and the pace that's being done and the advances being made at such a quick pace are really, really impressive. That's only going to get better. I think when you look at technologies that are moving forward, I think we're going to see a lot of the adoption of virtual, like I guess augmented. I think us being at home a lot, I've seen a few conferences pop up now that are in VR. Strap on your Oculus, sign up, go do that. I think we'll see a lot in that space. I think you're going to see a lot in machine learning, AI. I think the world's going to drive the technical advances. I think the things I would have said a year ago wouldn't be the same as they are now.
Right. And if you were to offer your earlier self any pieces of advice or maybe, some of the wisdom you've learned from mentors throughout the years, what would you try to pass back to yourself or pass back to somebody that's just getting their start in the industry?
Your soft skills. I think your soft skills will carry you very far. If you're going to go into cyber, you're going to put it into work. That's kind of why you get in the field. Like, cybersecurity is not easy by any means. Like, it is a technical field and it constantly changes. And you got to like the puzzle. You got to like the curiosity. You just got to have that mindset if you're going to get in the field, because that part's not going to go away and not going to change. So I think your soft skills, I think all those technical things that you learned, all those zeros and ones that you found more research on than anyone else, you've got to be able to explain that to a non-technical crowd, to a non-technical audience, and communicate effectively. And I don't think it's kind of a cybersecurity specific thing, but I think it's any industry, is be able to communicate what you need to effectively. I remember at the White House when we would generate some of our reporting, we would pass up, we'd condense maybe 6 or 7 different reports into a 1-paragraph summation that you had about 3 minutes to explain. So, be clear, be concise, get your point across. I think that carries you super, super far. And enjoy the experiences along the way, meet the people along the way. I've met some super, super interesting people, between the government, between being a goon at DEF CON, between being active in the lockpicking community. I've just met some of the most fantastic people on the planet. So enjoy that along the way.
I love that. And Mick, is there any final call to action you have for our listeners or folks out there that are looking to really, attack some of the major problems we see in the world?
There needs to be more focus on our political space. And it's hard to get cybersecurity in politics without making it political. You should vote for a candidate based on their policies, not whether their email was secure, whether their email was compromised or put online. I think vote for them as a candidate based on their policies, because you need a standardized, campaign play or cybersecurity playbook in politics. I think voting online, absentee balloting, again, these are huge, huge problems that we only seem to really care about when there's a general election, but not during anything in between.
Right. At the local level too is where you can, bump shoulders and get to meet some of those fascinating people that you alluded to and, really move the needle. So,
but that's the thing, right? Like you can elect the president. That's great. But the pothole at the end of your street, president not going to fix that.
Exactly.
So your local level, get more involved. Odds are your candidate that you might like can't afford cybersecurity. They just don't have the money. If you've got that talent, volunteer, help out. Our election systems themselves, again, like I said, I don't care who you vote for, just go vote, but figure out now who you're going to vote for, how you're going to vote. In November, you might not have the opportunity to go vote in person. So if you don't, do you know now how you're going to vote in November?
Powerful words. And it's been awesome talking to you, Mick. Thanks for being generous with your time. And to everyone listening, we will see you next time.
I'm Sophia Bush, and you've been listening to Hidden in Plain Sight from Mission.org. This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Splunk, the Data to Everything platform. In today's data-driven world, every company, big or small, new or old, is sitting on terabytes of unused, untapped, and unknown data. Splunk helps turn all that data into action. Using cutting-edge AI and machine learning, Splunk delivers real-time predictive insights that will help you on your mission to change the world. With solutions for IT, security, Internet of Things, and business operations, Splunk empowers people to make faster, better decisions and take action to get things done. It's time for our data to be more than a record of what happened. It's time to make things happen.